another edition of the CoreLink Solution. I am pleased to have on the line with me a good friend, Damon Hurst, who is a financial professional in banking. He partners with a team of experts who specialize in different areas of finance. He manages a multi-million-dollar book of business in a large financial institution and has been doing so for over 10 years. Now, you're probably thinking, why do I have Damon on the show today? We typically focus on personal and leadership development. Well, guess what? A big part of personal leadership development is financial stewardship. And we all know financial stewardship is important, but oftentimes we are challenged with how do you get started? Where do you get started? I need to reach a certain place before I get started. Well, today we're going to challenge those notions, and Damon's going to help us understand some of those things. So let me first stop and just welcome Damon to the show. Damon, thank you so much for being here, sir.
James, thank you so much for having me. Really honored to be here and really excited about today and adding some value to your listeners. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you. So maybe just take a step back. When we say a financial professional such as yourself and this team of experts that work in these various areas of finance, to me, it almost sounds like you're like a quarterback, if you will, for all these folks. And maybe you can explain how your role works and maybe even talk about some of the different people who work in those different roles, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I think the quarterback analogy is a great way of putting it. So if you all you sports fans out there, if you think about a quarterback, typically on every play, the quarterback is normally going to get the ball. And so depending on the play that's run, either the quarterback can take the ball and go with it himself, or he may hand it off or pass it to another teammate. And so really that analogy hits on pretty well, because that's exactly what it is. So really what my responsibility in the beginning is really just to get a good grasp and understanding of, what financial success looks like for the client that I'm working with. And so, once we have that context, then what we can do from there is really build from there. And then we can kind of build out timelines. And then depending on what the need may be, either I can take the ball and run it myself, or if it's more of a specialized need, then I can start to engage some of my other teammates and bring them on the field and really be able to provide the ultimate solution for the clients that we're working with.
Excellent. So, when you think about people who are starting their financial future, and maybe there's so many different ways to think about this, but maybe let's talk about, I like to create sometime an image of a person because that helps take it down. So let's call this person, let's call him Rodney. He's 20 years old. He's just graduated college. Maybe he's in his first job or so. And he's going, hey, Damon, I need to start thinking about my financial future. What would be the first piece of advice you give him when he says, how do I start thinking about the building blocks for my financial future? What are some of the first things I should be doing?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So I think the first thing, the good starting point is really knowing where you want to be. I think there's really no one size fits all approach to it. I think it really just kind of depends on the individual. And, one of the biggest things that I can really, share with a person is the value of goal setting. I think that's something that I really wish I would have had some guidance on early on in my career, is having that opportunity to really start to set goals and start to figure out what I wanted for my life. I think the importance of having mentors as well, too, is something that's really key also. Learning people passing down wisdom and knowledge who have kind of already been there and done that. Or, maybe they're still going through their own journey, but they're just at a different part of life. So I think really in the beginning, it's just finding out, where you want to be, what does success look like to you? And then I think from there, you can start to put the pieces together and really figure out the role that you're currently in right now. How can I maximize this, knowing what the ultimate goal may be? Because even where I started out, I didn't necessarily start out in banking, but I've progressed to get to this point. But every step of the way was a key step to get me to where I am today. And so I think there's learning in every stage of life. But just really understanding what the big picture looks like and then taking what you can from where you are now and look at it as a learning opportunity so that it can progress and be a building block as you continue to progress in your career.
Mm-hmm. Now, once they start to establish those goals and get those career goals together and start to point towards their financial goals, let's say, they say, well, look, I have X amount I want to have and so on and so forth. How do they begin to then start to put it into a physical form in your mind, right? Because most people will say, well, look, listen, I don't have any extra to begin saving, right? That's the one thing we always hear. No, people say, I don't have any extra to save, right? Right? I'm barely making it. I'm scrimping it together, right? So what's your response to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a situation that a lot of people are in, whether we like to admit it or not. It's a shocking stat is 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And so if you think about it, 76%.
76.
76, yeah, 76. It's alarming, especially one of the wealthiest countries in the world to have a stat like that. But I think in the beginning, it really comes down to the basics of, starting off with really your spending. Because in the beginning, especially if you're capped where you are as far as income wise, and at least in the beginning, one thing that we do have control over is where our dollars go every month. And so I think getting a grasp on that early is key, because even as you start to increase your income and make more money, if you don't get the spending thing in check early, then what's going to end up happening is that you're going to continue to progress that way anyway. I mean, whether you're a six-figure earner, let's say you're earning $200,000 a year, well, if that's $200,000 a year going out just as much as coming in, then what does that leave you at the end of the year? It's zero. So you're never truly getting ahead. So I think the first thing before you even start talking about some of the things we're probably going to go into today is just really controlling the spending aspect. If you can get some of those fixed costs to where you have a consistent amount that you know for a fact that's going out every single month, then that would be the foundation where you can start to build from there and start to talk about having enough money left over to then where you can be able to start to build or create wealth or do whatever it is that you want to do with your life. So,
got it. No, that's good. That's good. So one, controlling the spending. And when you impart that, I'm just curious now that you say that, right? Because it makes logical sense. When you say that to people, what's the typical reaction?
How? I think would probably be the typical, because, I mean, the thing about it is the world gets so much more expensive to live. So if you think about just the necessities of shelter, transportation, food costs, I mean, these things are continuing to go up every single year. And these are necessities of life. And so, and then also too, with the evolution of things like technology, social media, I mean, you have a lot of companies out there that are just flooding us with all this information, all wanting a piece of our dollars. And so it's like, it's difficult. It's a challenge to really say, hey, I'm going to control my spending, because it's so easy for you to pull out your phone and you're probably going to see an ad of someone wanting to get some of that money. And so it's like, how can I start to save for my future when there's so much temptation out there? And so I think a lot of it too just comes with the discipline. And it goes back to the beginning, what I said about goal setting as well too, is if you know where you want to be and what direction you want to end up at, then it's kind of like you're taking it in the short term and really understand that you're sacrificing for a bigger picture. I think it's one of those things that's easier said than done.
Sure. And
with my career as background being an athlete, I think that's one of the things I was fortunate of, is being able to delay self-gratification, because as a team member, you're working towards a bigger goal, and there's building blocks at each step. And so kind of delaying that gratification is something that's huge, because I think we're in such of a microwave society where we want everything instantly. We want it right now. We don't want to wait. We don't like to put things in the oven anymore and let it cook and marinate. Don't get me wrong. It tastes a lot better when it's in the oven.
Come on now.
But yeah, it tastes a lot better when it's in the oven, man. But we're such on the go society that we just want to stick it in a microwave, stuff it down our throats, and we're moving on to the next thing. So I think a lot of it comes to self-discipline, is really understanding how bad you want it. How bad do you want to achieve success financially? And a lot of times I think that's really what holds people back. Is not necessarily that they don't want to go after their goals, is they're not willing to give up the things they need to give up to get them there. And so if you can get past that point and understand that it's not a no, it's a not now with some of those luxuries of life, then I think you'll definitely be on the better track to get where you want to be.
Yeah. So the sacrifice now to get something bigger later.
Absolutely. I think that's huge. I think that's key.
That's good. Okay, good. So that's the first building block. What's the second building block when you think about it?
So once you get to a point to where you have your spending in control, at least you have a more consistent amount that you know is going out every single month. One of the biggest things is finding a way to then increase your income, because you can only cut so many expenses to a point to where it's bare minimum. So if you're ever going to get ahead, the next building block is going to be increasing your income. And so some of the ways that a person can increase their income is through building skills, is building the skills that you need to be able to get you to the next step in your career, whether it be a promotion, whether it be another job opportunity. It's finding out, as we talk about the goal setting, where you want to be. What are the skills that are valued in that particular job title or area to get me to where I want to be, and how do I acquire those skills? And that's where you get to the point of being able to be more valuable in the marketplace so that you can increase your income. And so promotion, a job is one thing. If you're already, let's say if you're a teacher And, and 9 to 5 is being a teacher during the day. You may want to start a part-time job or something on the side, not necessarily a part-time job, but just something on the side. You may offer tutoring on the side to be able to get some, to increase your income. There's a lot of network marketing companies out there. I know some have given a bad name to the network marketing piece, but I think you learn a lot of skills through network marketing, through leadership, business skills, but it really affords a lot of people the opportunity who maybe didn't have the opportunity otherwise to really start to build a financial future for themselves. So I think there's some great things to be said about being in those type of companies because your income is uncapped. And so if you are in a position where you do have capped income, maybe you're in a salary position, I think that's a great way to be able to make some extra dollars, increase your income, uncapped situation.
Yes.
So I think that's the next step is after you get the spending control, is finding ways to start increasing your income, because then you could be able to have a little bit of a surplus to be able to put to the side. Because whatever income that you get over and above your normal income from your job, you don't even want to factor that into your monthly budget. That needs to be money that's set aside and possibly even a separate account to where you don't even touch it, don't even look at it, it's outside of mind. Because like we talked about earlier, the tendency for people is they don't want to sacrifice. They want what they want now. And so the tendency could be if you get that extra income coming in, if you just go and just buy more stuff, which is the opposite of what we want to do. We definitely want to be able to get to that point to where we can afford to do that, but we're just not there yet.
Yep. You said a lot in there that I want to make sure is not missed, because there's a couple things, right? One, the fact that you as a financial professional is advising someone to increase their income vis-a-vis finding within their niche skills that are going to be valued in a different way. Man, that's a lot for a person to really say, acknowledge and go, wow, my financial professional is telling me step my game up so I can make more money to reach the goals that I set out for myself. That's huge, right? I mean, a person has to take that seriously. Part one. Part two, kind of going back to what you said earlier around the budget, right? And really controlling that budget. But then part three, what you said is, with that additional income, don't even look at it. Even going as far as redirect it to another account and do not look at it. Do not touch it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's huge. Okay, got it. All right. Are there any more steps in this ladder to financial success? I'm starting to call it now.
the ladder to success. That's a great title for it. So so we started off with controlling the spending. Next is going to be increasing the income, with saving the extra that you're getting now and not even factoring into monthly expenses. And then the next thing is you're continuing to build that cushion or that fund, starting to educate yourself. One of the things that I think we see a lot of times is just the lack of financial literacy out there. It's something that wasn't taught to us in school. And a lot of times conversations that we have, and even me personally, a lot of my foundation in the beginning just came off of what I saw growing up as a kid. And so depending on the information that you got and from the resources that you got, it may not have been the best. We just want to be honest with ourselves. And so it kind of goes back to what you said earlier, is taking control and really just being accountable, because, with the technology age that we live in right now, there's no reason whatsoever that people can't say they don't have the resource, because everybody has access to a smartphone pretty much for the most part. Some people even have 2 smartphones.
Right.
And so, you can pull up a YouTube, you can pull up information, emails, resources. I mean, the resources are out there if you're looking for it. I think that's the thing, is we have to be accountable and take control of our own future, to saying, hey, look, I'm understanding that this is an area that I probably have a lack of understanding in, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to continue that way. And so if you start to empower yourself, which I know is a common theme for your show here on the Core League Solution, is empowering individuals. I mean, shows like this today are the type of shows where you can say, hey, look, there are ways to do it, and I can take control of it. It's just a matter of what you do with the information. And so start to educate yourself, start to actually seek out, get the resources, understand the basic topics, the basic understanding of finance and money. And I think that would be the next thing. So as you're continuing to stack up and store up those resources that you have with the extra income that you have going in, start to educate yourself. Because the last thing the thing that we hate seeing is when people get into a situation where they have now the means to be able to do more, but then, they're not educated. And so then they get in a situation to where they may just pass it off to someone else. But while that's totally fine to do, you don't necessarily have to be in control of everything, especially if you have an expert that you trust. But at the same time, you need to kind of at least have an understanding so you can have really good dialogue and really good conversations with that person, because at the end of the day, it's still your money. Even if you hire someone to be able to help you with the management of it. So you need to be able to have those really good conversations and understand even just the basic topic as you continue to be able to create that path to your future.
Absolutely. You know, when it comes to financial resources, give this a thought in terms of what resources would you direct people to, right? And I'll share a few of my favorites. And I've shared this before, but I'll share them again for people. There's a couple books that I've read, and it seems like I read them again every so often. One is Think and Grow Rich. I think it's a great book to read through. There's a tremendous amount of nuggets in that. The Millionaire Next Door, a lot of nuggets in that book. I forget which one of them, but for example, one of the rules that I learned is either in one of those books or somewhere else is like the rule of 72. And that rule is the rule of when you invest money, it helps you calculate the interest rate and how often your money will double. So for example, you take your interest rate from the account that you're going to put your money into and divide it into the number 72. So if it's, for example, 10% interest and you divide that into 72, then that's going to take 7 years, right? 10 goes into 72 7 times roughly. It's going to take you 7.2 years for your money to double. So I remember the first time I learned that rule and I said, what? Okay. Wow, got it, right? You go, right. Okay, great. So then it makes you quickly think, okay, well, wait a minute. I want to invest as much money as I can in the highest interest earning accounts as I can now, right? It makes you start to think sooner about what you're doing, for example, right? And so when you think about, again, to your point, resources, the good news is there's so many resources available, but that often also becomes just all consuming that there's so many resources available, right? So for you, what do you direct people to in terms of good things to read and focus on?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, and I think you made a great point. Is that I think that's the good and the bad of being in a technological society is there is so much you can consume, but our time is finite. We only have a limited amount of time, and so where do I need to be able to focus my attention? So a point that I actually talk with a lot about my clients when it comes to what you just mentioned is going back real quick to the Rule 72 thing. That was an eye-opener for me as well when I learned about that as well, too, as far as how long it truly takes for you to double your money. Because I have a saying that goes, people tend to overestimate what it takes to reach their desired goal and underestimate the actions they're taking now to get there. So when you think about what it really truly takes, it takes time as well, too. And like we talked about, your time we have a limited supply. It's the most valuable resource that we have. And so how do we use that time? So you brought up some great books that I am familiar with as well, too. And so just to even add on to that, I think probably one of the most eye-opening books that I've read that really kind of changed my perspective on how I look at money is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that book right there. Yes. Oh, my goodness. When I read that book,
how could I forget that?
Yeah, it's a classic, but it just changes your perspective of how I would recommend everybody to read that book. When we're talking about building the financial blocks in education, the topic of what this show is today, that is an all-time right there. It also teaches you that every type of income is not created equal as well, too. And so there's you talk about nuggets. I mean, great pieces of information, completely changed my outlook. And a lot of people that I work with and clients of mine, they all know this book as well, too. And so it's something that I would highly recommend people to read. And when we talk about building the financial repertoire, that's going to be definitely in my bookcase for sure. So I would definitely recommend that. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, the value of masterminding. I think that was really a big topic I got from Napoleon Hill is we don't do it. We can't do it by ourselves. I mean, and so surrounding yourself with like-minded people or even people who maybe are a little bit further ahead of you, and surrounding yourself and being in that environment, because we are the sum of the 5 people we hang around, or we're around most often. Right. So the value of the masterminds, when you talk about the J.P. Morgans of the world, is something who was mentioned in that book. You talk about Andrew Carnegie. I mean, some of the big names I know a lot of people know were in that book, and they hung out. They were cool, and they had these masterminds and these talks, and they bounced, everybody had expertise in different areas, but together they were a powerful force. And so I think that's something that's critical as well, too, is connecting with people who want to do more, who want to do better, and having your own mastermind and be able to because everybody has their different skill sets and different strengths and talents, and combining those resources together can be just powerful. And so I think the Think and Grow Rich is a huge one that I would put up there as well, too.
Absolutely. No, that's a good one. No, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, thanks for filling that one. I can't believe I forgot that one on my list. Absolutely. So now, if the person has moved forward, I think I called him Rodney. So Rodney's gotten a little older.
Okay.
He took your advice. He's been controlling his budget. He's got some surplus. He started doing some Uber, some driving Uber, some Uber Eats, some Airbnb over here. Gave up his apartment sometimes, and now he's got a little stash, and he's going, you know what? I want to make this stash work a little harder for me. So he comes back, Damon, what else can I do now that I've got a little nugget over here? How can I make this nugget grow even more aggressively? What would you then say to him?
Yeah, I would say, Rodney, congratulations, man. You're moving on up. You're making it happen, brother. I'd definitely be congratulating him because of the journey and what it takes to get to this point. That's the biggest thing, is because it does take a lot, and it's something that be an overnight thing. And so acknowledging the fact that we're becoming where he is great. But like you said, you control the spending, increase the income, you got something left over, you've been educating yourself along the way. Now it's time to take action. It's time to actually, start to implement and start to act on some of the things that you've been researching and following through, because now you have the means to do so. And so there's a lot of, as you said, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. One of the things that I would probably say in the beginning is maybe if you're not in a position where you have enough wealth to where it makes sense for you to hire someone to manage it for you, definitely some ways on your own that you can be able to, start to put your own money to work. And so there are companies out there that have some very nice interface mobile apps. They'll allow you to start investing with smaller sums. The key thing there is they also have education as well too. So you can actually pull the resources and get information on the companies that you're actually putting money into and the different things to look for as far as on, what would be a good company to invest in. And so or maybe you don't want to do individual companies. Maybe you want to look at a multitude of companies packaged into one. We call those mutual funds, right? So there's a lot of different ways you could do that. And there's also some unconventional ways now of investing. I think a lot of times when people think of investing, they think of the markets. But, you have the evolution of things like peer-to-peer lending, where literally it is what it is you are actually lending money to other people who are paying you back, kind of like a bank. People can be the lenders now. And so that's probably an unconventional way now that people can start to invest, is starting to lend out money and be a bank. So those are some things that you definitely take a look at. And then a lot of times it comes into whether or not you even want to put in the time to do it yourself. And so if you're in that situation where maybe you're rocking and rolling, you've built these skills up where you're so busy that you maybe just don't have the time, but now you have the resources, that's when you can start to vet or start to reach out and look for teams, kind of like maybe a team like ours, who has professionals, right, who have experience, who you can, develop that trust with. And now that you are educated and you do know some of the foundation and building blocks, you can have really good dialogue and really good conversations. So you're not just blindly handing your money off to someone and hoping that they do well with it. You actually are having good dialogues, good conversations. You're having regular appointments, checking in. You have full transparency to understand exactly what you're paying for the service, but also understanding the performance that you're getting in return. But like I said, you're in a position now where you can be able to have that better dialogue and really make it worth your time. And so I think there's various ways you can go with that. It's just a matter of really how hands-on you want to be. And so if you do want to be more hands-on, there's definitely ways you can do that. If you want to be more passive and you want to definitely get an expert to help you out, well, definitely want to make sure you do your research and take your time and make sure that you feel comfortable with the team that you're choosing. And also have those regular follow-ups and regular check-ins to make sure that they're doing what they said that they would do.
In there, you shared a lot of wisdom and expertise. And I just want to back up a minute because, again, I want to make sure people don't miss this, and I'll make sure I put this in the show notes. But I just want to dial back a second from that point when we talked about the rule of 72 as an example, right? And the example I used was, again, let's just say you wanted to earn 10% and 10 goes into 72 roughly 7 times. So it'll take you 7 years to double your money. What Damon just walked through was an illustration of the choices you can make to get to a target interest rate, right? We talked about individual stocks as an example, or a mutual fund where instead of just betting on one company, let's just say, for example, you said, well, I'm a big Microsoft fan. I play Xbox all the time. I believe in Microsoft. I want to buy some Microsoft stock. You can go and buy Microsoft stock. You can Google it today. It's publicly available information. You can look at all their I forget the name, K1s or whatever, their annual reports. all their information, it's all public information because they're a public company. So you can look at that information and begin to learn how they operate to make a bet, if you will, quote unquote, on how much you want to invest and how much belief you have in how good they're going to do and how much money you're able to earn and how soon you'll be able to double your money based on historical information and what you believe about their future, right? That's one way to bet. The second way to bet he talked about was mutual funds, where you'll get a fund that Microsoft may be in, but it's Microsoft, it's Ford, it's a whole bunch of different companies. And there's a litany, right, Damon, of mutual funds. I mean, created in all different kinds of ways, right? I mean, it just runs the gamut, right? And then you could do stuff that's safer like bonds, which are, I think, bonds are typically government backed, so on and so forth, which are going to run lower interest rate, but they're safer, right? And then he also talked about peer-to-peer lending, which I'm not really abreast on. I've seen some of it. I haven't dabbled in it yet. But if I understand peer-to-peer, when I looked at it, you can set the interest rate, but it's also one of the higher risk opportunities, right? Because if someone doesn't, quote unquote, pay you back, you're just kind of out, but you could set a high interest rate, right? And again, you make that bet. So the point though I really wanted to make is all of this information is at your fingertips where you can research these things and decide what you want to do. Then you've got a whole nother stream where you can decide you want to work with someone like Damon and his team who can help take some of this work out of your hands, right? And run it for you, and you be consulted by them, with them, and they do some of the work for you, or they advise you and you do the work yourself, depending on what kind of model you want to work with them in. Did I state that correctly, Damon?
Yeah, you got it. And so as we talk about the going back to the quarterback analogy, so when we're talking about putting money to work, growing wealth, being able to be beating inflation, that's the big thing, which is the reason why you invest anyway. And that could be another conversation topic there. That's where we engage one of my other team members. And so I have a team member that does nothing but that. And so really the value there is the expertise. But when you talk about the resources and having them at your fingertips, working with a team like the one that we have is the access that we have. And so when you talk about doing the research or understanding what are good choices, what are not good choices, I mean, we can go a little bit deeper in that to say understanding the economy, because depending on what's going on in the world and with the economy, that can also influence what decision and what opportunities are best now as opposed to 2 or 3 years down the road. And so that's where really the value, like having a team where if you don't have the skill or the will to do it yourself, would be of value is understanding where the opportunities are and where to get those resources and like I said, just having it at your fingertips. Sometimes people just don't even know where to start. Where do I go? I know I can Google it, but how do I know this is a good company? What do I need to be looking for? And so those are some other things. And like I said, I mean, that's not something I personally handle for our team, but I do have a teammate that does that, and that's all they do. And so that's some value that having a team like that can add to you as well, is being able to know where to look, where the opportunities are, and also kind of gauge overall where you want to be and where you are in your bigger picture, going back to the whole roadmap example of what success looks like for you. You know, where are we at in that stage? And if we're at that stage where financial freedom is a few years down the road, or maybe we want to get it there sooner, then this becomes a big part of it, because as you just said, James, the rule of 72 tells you how long it takes for that money to double, and time is not always on our side. So maybe having a team can help you get there a little bit quicker without having to go through some of those trial and errors. So
Exactly. So from your experience, right, I can literally see someone listening to this. They're riding in their car. Rodney's on the way home. It's making sense to him, right? He starts to pull into his driveway or next to the curb. But then he has that moment, right? Tell me what the moment usually is, Damon, that typically holds someone back. What is it that typically stops someone from going into starting the savings process and getting going on this? What's the typical barrier?
You know what? That's a great question, James. I think it hits us all too. It's a 4-letter word, James. Fear.
Fear of what?
It's fear. It's the fear of making a mistake. Fear that you just don't know enough yet. Fear of if you're making the right decision. I mean, it's the same insecurities that we all deal with, especially, going back to what we talked about earlier with us. When I say us, I mean, as a society, really, for the most part, not being financially literate and not really having that foundation, even though we have gone through all these steps we talked about. At some point, when you do have to make a decision to take an action, it's still that fear of failure. And that's a real fear and something that has to be acknowledged. And so if I could say anything that holds people back, not just when it comes to finance, but really overall, anything they want to accomplish is just that fear of the unknown, of not knowing, having a guarantee on the other side of what the outcome is going to be. And so it definitely takes courage, I believe, to really overcome that, and having trust and belief in yourself. And being okay with being put out there. And, and there will be some cases where maybe it doesn't work out. James, as accomplished as you've been, I'm sure you could probably attest to this as well, too, as your journey and career has gone on, that you've probably made some mistakes.
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
You've probably had some setbacks. But I think it's all in how we look at failure, too. And if we fail and quit, then it was a failure. But if we can fail and keep going and learn from those experiences and maybe make different choices or have a different approach to it, then we can still see success. But the fear is something that never goes away. Even as you start to progress, that fear is going to always be there, but it's just having the courage to be able to take that step out. And I think that really is what separates people who achieve success and people that don't achieve success. It's just the fact of how they handle fear and the approach they have to it, and not allowing fear to cripple.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, Thomas Edison, right? I think his quote was, "I've not failed. I've just discovered 10,000 ways that didn't work."
Oh, exactly.
That's one of my favorite
exactly.
quotes, right? And Michael Jordan's, if people knew how many shots that I missed, they wouldn't think I was all that incredible, something like that, right? I mean, so, most of the champions talk about how many things didn't go right. Right. People focus on what went well, but for real, what didn't go right, the champion in them keeps coming back and keeps swinging. So, yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. So, Damon, the last thing I'd ask you, and then I'd open the floor to you to share any tips that you think about is, when you look at yourself and your career and all the things you've done, what do you do to keep yourself fresh? Because, as a financial professional, I'm sure you get inundated with things. What's your secret sauce to staying fresh in this area? If you can share that. If you can't share it because it's just too secretive, I respect that.
Hey, I respect that, James. Some things are just top secret, man. I just can't disclose, Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just how it is. But this is something I can definitely talk about and would love to talk about because I think it's important. I'm really big into personal development. I'm really big into growth and really trying to master my craft and living up to my potential. And so there's really 3 things that I focus on every day and make a part of my day to make me feel like that I lived it with purpose. And so the first thing is inspiration. And so one of the things that I do every day is I have my devotion time and I really refocus on my why every day. Right. So it goes back to, so when I talk about goal setting in the beginning of the call, it's something that I practice myself because I always want to make sure that I have my eyes on the target and what I need to do, because depending on what direction I want to be in long term affects the decisions that I make today. And so really refocusing on my why every single day and having that in perspective, then I can be able to live the day with purpose as I go on. And just starting my day with positive information, definitely tune into a lot of positive people who motivate, people who inspire, and really just kind of get me going and give me the energy that I need. Because there are long days. I don't have a necessarily physically demanding job, but it can be mentally draining. One of my degrees in college was psychology. And so, people say, well, how do you use psychology in finance? Well, I work with people, and people attached to money can get emotional. And so it can be mentally draining at times. And so definitely having the inspiration and refocus on my why is the first thing. The second thing is education. One of the things that I'm big about is mastering your craft. And so in order to do that, you have to continue to be a student at what you do. If you look at the marketplace, the people who are the most valued are the expert. And so if you can get yourself into a position where you continue to be a student and learn everything that you can about your craft and be that go-to person in that space, one of the things that I think about as I think about my relationship with my clients is, I call myself a partner to my client. And so one of the things I want to be as a partner is I always want to think about how I can add value to the people that I work with. And so part of that is the education piece, is make sure that I'm staying up to date on all the current information I need to know, continuing to learn new things, and then also not forgetting the basics as well too, because you never know how the conversation is going to go sometimes with people. And so staying sharp and staying educated is something that really, really put a focus on. So that's number 2. And then the third thing is communication. And so me being in the industry where I work with people, we talk about skill building. One of the things that I really focus on is how can I become a better communicator? How can I be more effective as I deliver ideas, as I be able to engage with people, being a great listener. How can I ask better questions? So I've invested thousands of dollars into things like seminars, conferences, audiobooks, training seminars, you name it. I'm willing to spend money and invest in myself because of the return that I know that I'm going to get. And so communication is a big deal because I don't care what you do or who you are, you're going to interact with people. Maybe if you're not in an industry to where your success is depending on how those interactions play out, but you're going to be in a situation where you're trying to negotiate on a home loan with a seller, or you're going to try to buy a car, or maybe you're trying to talk to someone about going to your favorite restaurant. Maybe they don't want to go to your favorite restaurant. Maybe they want to go to their favorite restaurant. And so how do you influence that decision and get them on board with your idea? And so I think communication is the third thing, is just making sure that I'm always improving and sharpening the saw, as you say, and just getting more skilled and be able to effectively communicate with people. And then also helping them get to where they want to be, even when they don't think that it's the right way to go, because maybe I'm asking them to step out of their comfort zone, but just helping them be reassured that this is the right decision. I have their best interest at heart, and helping them maybe see a different perspective on it. So,
right. Awesome. No, that's good. That's good. Hey, thank you for sharing those. And your secret sauce. Yes. Thank you for divulging.
Well, it doesn't come out for everybody, James, but for you, my friend, we can make it happen.
I appreciate that. Hey, before we close, are there any other tips you want to share with the audience before we close?
James, I think we've talked about a lot. I think the only thing that I would share, in addition to what we talked about today, I listened to the Quarterly Solution. I know one of the questions you asked your guests is, if you could look back on your 20-year-old self, what would you say? Or what would you advice you would give to that person?
Yes.
Well, first of all, 20-year-old wasn't that long ago for me. I'm in my early 30s, so I can remember that far back. But probably one of the biggest things is what I mentioned earlier is being a master in your craft. I think one of the things I would have changed is I think I would have gotten more serious earlier and really focused on being that go-to person earlier. So all the steps that I'm talking about now have been steps that have probably come within the past few years, but I really would have probably taken a step further earlier and really become a master of my craft and just understand the importance of what it means to be an expert. And so I think that's something that I would, no matter what you do or what industry you work in, work at being the best at what you do. Be that go-to person to where they think of podcasts, they think of the Quarterly Solution first. When they think of finance, they think of Damon first. Be that go-to person in your space. It's going to cost you to have to step out of your comfort zone probably to get there, and it's going to take courage and getting past fears. But the people who can become the expert tend to be the more valued in the space, and as a result, they become more successful faster. So that's probably the only other thing that I would share is just that thought there, is mastering your craft and being the best you can and reaching your potential.
Damon, that's good. That's good. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy, crazy day with your multi-million-dollar portfolio, man. I really am appreciative of that. I hope the audience is as well. I think you dropped a lot of nuggets and inside information here in a very succinct way to help people get further faster. So thank you.
Absolutely, James. Thank you for having me. It was an honor. And like I said, I really hope it added value to your guest today, and I appreciate you having me.
Thank you for linking up with me for another episode. You are informed, and so now you are empowered, and you can be accountable. A few takeaways for me from this episode. Number one, budget. Sacrifice now to get bigger later. Stick to a budget. Number two, increase your income as you can. And when you do, move that surplus to a separate account. Damon talked about that focus on a separate account. Set that direct deposit there and almost try to forget about it. Number three, become financially literate. There's no reason not to. There are a multitude of books you can read, podcasts you can listen to, and videos that you can watch. Number four, investing is so important. Minimally, you must beat inflation, and it's hard to do that simply sitting still or working from paycheck to paycheck. Investing is critical. And then last but certainly not least, number five, take action now. The sooner you do, the sooner your interest can start to build. Remember that rule of 72. Take action now. So those are my takeaways from this episode, but I'm sure you have others. Please share them with me. Further, as always, I'm going to tell you, if you find the podcast to be of value, please hit the subscribe button on whatever device you listen to it on, rate and review. As you listen to these podcasts, you may have questions. Here's some things that are new to you, terminology you may be hearing for the first time. All those things are good. I'm here to serve. Go to the website at thecorelinksolution.com. Right below the show notes, you'll see a comment section. You can ask questions, you can mention challenges you face in the areas we cover, and even tell me other guests you'd like to hear from. As an alternative, you can do those same things through Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next episode. And until then, be informed, be empowered, be accountable.